Alex Wassabi and KSI had their first virtual face-off. Let's get into it. And shout out to Wade for not only being a commentator, but getting this huge job. This guy deserves it. If you know Wade Concept, then you know. And so let's get into what was said. So the first thing that was said from KSI is that he's willing to fight Alex at any stance. That's orthodox, southpaw, angles. He will give Alex anyone. And I think the thing that I've taken away from KSI is his goal is not to necessarily knock out Alex, but to prove to people that he has technique. And as I've said this many times before, he does. And if you take any spar and the Joe Weller fight, KSI does not windmill once. I just think it was because it was Logan, but I do think he has a bad habit of just going headhunting, and he needs to break guys down, go to the body, really take his time, and I think that's what I want to see from KSI, and if he doesn't do that, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed. I think what we want to see is KSI coming out and showing real boxing abilities, and obviously it's not going to be good boxing ability, but it's going to be ability that's good for, you know, the YouTuber, the guys that's been doing it. So I think that's what he wants to show, and that's what I want to see, and I'm glad that he's doing that, and listen, this video was pretty much him bullying Alex. Alex didn't really say much. Some people are saying, like, Alex was scared and he wasn't saying anything, and then other people said, you know, no one could just listen to KSI for half an hour and not lash out. So they both showed confidence in different ways. I agree with both opinions. I don't think that Alex is as scared as people think he is, but I think that there's no way that KSI is not in his head in some way. And it doesn't really matter his demeanor, KSI's, because we all know the result. Like, let's not BS ourselves. We know what's going to happen on August 27th. We understand what this fight is for. Another thing is that KSI was very animated in this press conference, which was very different from his demeanor in the Logan Paul press conferences, where he was a bit more quiet, but still had the character, and he was talking about, I'm the nightmare, you will see me in your dreams, all of this he was mad. You could tell there was real passion. And I think a big way of selling this fight is that KSI is underestimating Wassabi. But that's just not true. You know, we learned that KSI is weighing in at around 176 pounds at this moment. And they decided to change the weight to 175. And I guess he's lost 30 pounds from December to now. Another thing is Alex, again, he didn't say much. He was kind of very quiet. And again, it's just not a good look when, you know, an opponent is being quiet. It gives off the perception versus the reality. Like, Alex might be realistically not scared at all, but it just gives off the perception of that. And, you know, just because KSI is talking doesn't mean Alex can engage with him and converse with him. You know, and so I feel like even though, yes, he could just be doing the quiet, you know, persona to show his way of confidence, but I just feel like Alex was lacking in both energy and in confidence, honestly. I mean, there were moments like when Wade was like, got anything else to say, Alex? And he was like, yeah, whatever. Like, it just did not come off well. Again, it's not necessarily the reality of what Alex is feeling and thinking in that moment and now, but it just gives off a bad perception. And if I were Alex's talent agent or manager, I'd be like, you gotta step it up a little bit. You gotta speak up more. Literally, he has to speak more. We also got confirmation that KSI broke his nose in sparring, and he's been training with big guys, and a lot of the talk about, like, changing the weight, and, you know, this is your biggest bag, and then you're going to become irrelevant, and talking about how he's working with people that are not on the level, is very similar to how Jake has been talking. I don't think KSI is copying Jake necessarily, but I think it's just very reminiscent, just goes to show how similar these two are, in a lot of ways when it comes to fighting. And KSI also said that Alex doesn't have that killer instinct like him and Jake does. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I definitely don't think Alex has the grit necessarily, but I think he does have the killer instinct. KSI, you know, he can't say, you know, what he should be saying, which is, yeah, 3 years out the ring, I need to have warm-up fights, which is totally normal and acceptable, and I think, I'm not going to say if I think KSI can beat Jake right now, but I think, you know, a better response would have been, you know, obviously I'm not going to fight someone that's been so active, and, you know, I want to be the best I can possibly be for Jake Paul and make sure that, you know, we are at the same level, because the more they're at the same level, the more competitive, the more entertaining the fight is. And I definitely do think KSI said, like, I'm coming back to beat Jake Paul, and it's interesting because Jake talked on the DAZN boxing show, I believe, at some point today, said the following. I don't think he ever fights me. Why would he sign up for that risk? He knows what would happen. I wouldn't even have to train to fight. I could make 20 to 30 million, show up eating pizza, and knock him out 2 rounds max. If you think that KSI can lose to Jake Paul, I 100% know why. I 100% get it. You are valid in your thinking. But to me, personally, I think that the fight is still something that could happen, where the obvious guy might not win. But for him to have that mentality is the kind of the same mentality Logan had, and I do think Jake works harder, has more heart, but that's just, if you're a Jake Paul fan, it's a little concerning to have Jake have that mentality, because I think a lot of people look down at KSI and they don't take him seriously, but then when you get in the ring with him, you're like, oh wow, I should have taken him seriously. So that was an interesting comment from Jake. I didn't think he would say something like that. KSI also said that he wants to toy with Alex and not knock him out in the first round, which is a great excuse in case I can't get him out in the first round. But it's kind of a lose-lose, because if you don't get him out in the first round, people are like, well, Jake would have knocked him out in the first round, but then people will also be like, well, you showed amazing technique. And the thing is even if KSI would have knocked out Alex Wassabi in the first round, he's gonna look like Floyd Mayweather, because Alex is not on his level. There were like levels, and KSI's gonna look amazing, and his technique will look better than it actually is. Just like I said about Jake versus Ben, Jake versus Nate. See, guys, I'm not biased. I don't have a double standard. So of course, I'm not gonna be like, oh yeah, KSI is gonna knock out Jake Paul if he beats and knocks out Wassabi, because they're just 2 different levels. I think that the internet fandoms and the hype and the, casuals of boxing see a knockout, they see a great performance, and then they think this guy can beat anyone. But that's not true. It's like Jake beating Gibb meant no way that he could beat KSI. Obviously, a lot's changed since then. Now it's very clear that, people like he could beat him, and most people think that Jake would beat KSI. So one fight can't deduce and change everything, but it certainly can change the perception of things, which is the bigger thing in the YouTube boxing space. But again, perception different from reality. It was entertaining. KSI put on a great performance. Again, I think the reality of Alex versus the perception are different things, but the perception, and what I think a lot of the audience will walk away from, is Alex isn't confident, KSI's in his head, and more specifically, he just was not entertaining. And even if Alex doesn't want to, even if that's Alex's way of showing confidence, it just doesn't make for a very entertaining press conference. But again, at the end of the day, the demeanor, all that stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't really factor into the fights. But also, this fight, we know what's going to happen, so, Anyways, guys, that's the video. Like, sub, and comment, and I will see you soon. Peace.